Hi everyone, welcome back to the Lucan Center. My name is Timothy Meyer. I'm the Assistant Director here at the Lucan Center. Today I am joined by Dr. Brian Amarello. He is one of our therapists here at the Lucan Center. Today we're going to open up a discussion on intersectionality and work with individuals in the LGBTQ plus population. So I look forward to my conversation today with Dr. Amarello. He is our resident expert on this. So, Brian,
Call me Brian.
Brian, to start off, could you start off by speaking a little bit about your experience, clinically, research?
Yeah. So I've been here at the Lucan Center for probably about 3.5 years now. Clinically, I have a wide range of interests. I work with depression, anxiety, identity issues, which we're going to talk a lot about today, specifically in terms of LGBTQ+. I have experience working with children. I have experience working with geriatrics. I've taken it upon myself to have training in the lifespan. So I feel comfortable working with a child. I feel comfortable working with someone who is elderly. Again, for a variety of issues. But one of my specialties is working with the LGBTQ+ population, and that's been probably one of the great joys of my career thus far. And again, all ages, children, adolescents, older adults.
Great. So Brian, would you be able to explain for the audience, we're going to be using the term intersectionality a lot today.
Yes.
So would you be able to give a little bit of an informal definition on what intersectionality means?
So one of the first things I ask a patient when I'm sitting with them is, tell me who you are, right? And what I mean by that is, what's your gender? What is your race? What is your ethnic background, right? What is your religion, right? And the reason why I think that's a really, really important first thing to ask someone is because it tells me a lot about who they are, right? And when we look at something like sexual orientation, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, all of those things somehow intersect to create the whole person, right? So for example, someone who is evangelical Christian and lesbian may have a much more difficult time, or may have a little bit of, may have some issues around mental health in comparison to their, heterosexual counterparts, right? So the intersection of one's religion and one's sexual orientation could create, depression, anxiety, or other issues with mood and mental health as well. Sure.
So really, what I hear you saying is, looking at intersectionality, it's all aspects of the person.
Yes.
Right. And I feel like that is such an important piece for us to talk about today, because we're talking about the LGBTQ plus community, right? And it's been my experience, and maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on this. Mm-hmm. When someone identifies as being in the LGBTQ plus community, mm-hmm. it's almost like that is their main identity, right? And maybe the other aspects, which are equally important, mm-hmm. Could be lost. So anyways, would you be able to elaborate a little bit more about intersectionality and how you look at and conceptualize cases through that intersectional lens?
Right. And I'm very big on meeting the person where they are, right? So if they tell me it's the largest part of their identity, then I'll believe that, right? But if they're not coming in for that and they're coming in for other various reasons, that's something that you want to also meet them where they are too. Just because they're coming in, just because they identify as LGBTQ plus doesn't automatically mean that's the issue that they're coming to seek treatment for. One of the things I think is really important in terms of intersectionality is for the therapist specifically to understand the impact that those intersections could have on the person's mental health, mm-hmm. right? So for example, understanding that, we know that black men do not come out of the closet at the same rate as their white counterparts, right? Mm-hmm. Black gay men. So with that being said, we have to understand that there's a struggle there, right? Or there might be a struggle there, but also not automatically assume that that's what they're coming to see you for.
Right.
If that makes sense.
So I mean, I think that's a really great example, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, if someone was automatically under the assumption that that individual you were speaking about mm-hmm. had the same experience as their white counterpart, they would be missing an entire
completely
extremely important piece.
Yes.
And so I agree. I find that extremely important. You know, oftentimes when I'm thinking about intersectionality and LGBTQ plus and struggles that I think about, I think a lot about religion, because I feel like there are religions out there that may not go along with different morals, different values. I don't think that it would be an uncommon experience for someone who identifies as one religion and then their, let's say their sexuality doesn't necessarily align. There could be an internal conflict there, maybe like a lot of shame, a lot of questioning, who am I, a lot of that sort of stuff. And I think, well, to your point, it's extremely important that we look at both of those aspects of that identity in order to understand probably the presenting problem that someone's coming in with.
Exactly, and that's a really good, I like how you talk about alignment, because what a person really is trying to do with that internal conflict is saying, well, how can I have these two parts of my identity coexist, right? How can I, be a Christian, and how can I also be gay, right? And very often I'll say to patients, we're doing a juggle right now. We have to juggle two things, right, that seemingly may not be able to coexist together, but if we have discussions and we talk about plans and ways to sort of nicely intersect these two parts of you, right, and that may mean sometimes switching schools of faith, right? I've worked with patients that have left certain, faiths or religions and have gone to ones who kind of, welcome LGBTQ plus people a little bit more. I've also been with people that, wanted to certainly conceal part of their sexual orientation because they were strongly involved with their religious faith, and that was just something that was in alignment with their goals, right? And as a therapist, right, one of the first things I learned anyway was to meet them where they are and to support and, just kind of roll with it from there.
I think that's such an important point, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but, it seems to me like it sort of had to be like, maybe in history, one or the other. It's either like, you're either gay or you're religious, right? The two couldn't coexist, right? And a lot of what I'm hearing you saying is like, well, perhaps meeting the person where they're at, maybe they can. Right. Or maybe there's a tweak or maybe there's a change.
Right.
And, well, I guess I'm just thinking that's a relatively new way of thinking about this.
So one of the great terms I use with patients all the time, and not just specific to this issue, is the dialectics, right? What are these two sort of conflicting ideas, right? Like, very simple, I'll say to a person, you can love another person, and also hate them at the same time, right? Yep. Right? But you can also be Christian and you could be gay at the same time, right? So I think there's like sort of a really quick sense of peace in that, where a patient's like, I never thought about it that way, right? And although it's confusing to figure out what it's going to look like, there's hope, right? So you instill hope in them in that moment so that they know that with your help, right, and your guidance, you can kind of assist them in creating that intersectionality that's not going to necessarily cause that depression and cause that anxiety that I mentioned of earlier.
Right, it's almost like two things coming together, and rather them kind of crashing together, and either one goes away or there's some sort of big internal conflict. It's sort of like, okay, these two parts of my identity are coming together, and how are we going to make them fit?
Right.
How are we going to make them work?
And that's the work that you do moving forward.
Yeah, and so I guess I'm just thinking a lot about, previously there was a lot of either or. It's like you're either Catholic or gay, and so when I think about that dynamic, I think a lot about like conversion therapy.
Right.
Conversion therapy still exists, and well, I wanted to hear a little bit of your thoughts about that.
Well, it's ironic. Like, you can Google like LGBTQ therapy, and somewhere, probably on the first page of Google, you'll see some sort of ad or website that advertises conversion therapy. Look, one of the things I say personally to my friends all the time, because I also identify as gay, and I have lots of friends who identify as gay, I say it personally to them, and I say it professionally to the people that I work with, and I say it to colleagues. If you look at the history of the LGBTQ plus movement, we have pretty much advanced, very, very much so, right? We've come a long way in terms of being able to adopt in some or most states. We've come a long way in terms of marriage, right? So there has been an advancement of rights, and unfortunately, with advancements, that doesn't mean a full-blown, we have everything in the world, right? There are still, people who have certain beliefs that there is a type of treatment that can pray the gay away or make the gay go away based on what I've heard all kinds of things. And it's just unfortunate. And it's kind of like the work we still have to do, as a community. And I'm grateful that, I get to do that professionally and personally. But it's unfortunate. And, but at the same time, I'm a psychologist, right? So I believe that people have beliefs for a reason, and people are entitled to those beliefs for those reasons. And that can be okay at the same time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Brian, what would you say to a viewer who, let's say, they're struggling in one way or another with two aspects of their intersectionality, right? Who might be kind of grappling or dealing with that conflict of these two parts that don't necessarily mesh. What sort of insight, advice, what would you want to say to them?
I would say to them, right now, I'm going to operate under the assumption that you think it's going to be really hard to have all of these parts of you exist within you at the same time. And I recognize that if you believe that that's possible, which it is, that it's like looking up a hill and you're like, oh my God, that hill is so high and I have so much work to do. But the good thing is, just because things are difficult and challenging doesn't mean they can't be done, right? And seeking out a therapist, preferably who has some sort of specialty or subspecialty in working with these individuals, I really think is often the best case scenario. And you have to have hope, because it's possible. It's possible. I've seen, beautiful religious families of, who have some members of LGBTQ+ within them, really flourish and really feel like they live a, motivational and hopeful and peaceful life and can feel really well-rounded. And that's a great feeling. Hard work, but a great feeling.
That's great.
Yeah.
So aside from religion, I also know that race and ethnicity also play a big part, big factors in LGBTQ work. Would you be able to speak a little bit more about that?
So yeah, and totally, it's definitely a really big intersection for people. As I mentioned earlier, there are certain racial and ethnic backgrounds that come out or move through their process at different rates as their white versus their white counterparts. One of the things that one of the things that makes it significantly different from the religion discussion is you can't choose your race or your ethnic background, right? You can choose your religion on some level. But it's an area of our identity that we're kind of, stuck with at birth. So we see that there are struggles within certain, like the Black community or the Latino community where, again, the coming out process, the fluidity of the process is just slowed down by some of those racial and ethnic factors. And again, that's unfortunate, right? So very often people are going to come to you and say, my parents I can never come out to my parents, right? My dad is African American, he's a military dad, he's the definite, right? I've heard all kinds of things. He's the definition of what it means to be a straight man in the world today, right? And then you're kind of like, well, what do I do with this person, right? So again, right, to go back to my earlier point, you meet them where they are. Right? You want to assess how they feel about being marginalized and being part of the community. You want to assess how, willing they are to work on some of this stuff, right? Because very often things that are hard to work on, a person's kind of like, I'm not going to touch that, and making sure that if that's what they want, you as their therapist is not enforcing them to do something that they may not be ready to address.
Right, and I guess you just made me think about this. Brian, with you saying that, I'm just thinking about the experience of someone who's struggling with different aspects of their identity and their intersectionality and how they must be clashing. To sit across from someone who who meets them where they're at, who's able to sort of listen to and understand each aspect, and how empowering that must be, and how that experience is probably so rare.
Do you want to know why it's important for a therapist to meet the patient where they are in terms of their LGBTQ plus area of identity? Because they very much probably in their life have people that are pushing them in the closet, and they have people in their life, right? They have the cheerleader, like, come out, who cares what your parents say, come out, right? But to sit with someone who's like not forcing them to do anything, right? And to just be able to say, this is what I want to do, right? I always say, I don't tell people what to do. I support people in what they do, right? They have tons of people in their lives, hopefully, right? That's the definition of support. They have people in their lives that will push them in or out, will push them in all kinds of directions, and that is not a therapist's job. So that's how I feel, and that's why it's such a powerful experience for them.
Right, to sit and be with,
right,
and fully understand.
Right. Like, gosh, this guy's not like telling me what to do, finally, you know?
And I think that that's so important for therapy overall, but especially, right, in this conversation of intersectionality.
Yeah.
Right? So Brian, the question that's coming to my mind right now, you know, we're talking about LGBTQ plus individuals, so 6 different types of folks in this conversation about intersectionality. Would you be able to speak to like any sort of like specific needs for each LGBTQ plus?
You know, one of the things that, you know, is kind of a benefit but also a deficit is the lumping together of all of those populations. Each of them have such a variety of different needs. I mean, I can't use the term variety enough. With that being said, it gets incredibly complicated when you add the differences of those, and then you add on religion, and then you add on race and ethnic background. Right? All of that is going to be very different for each of those communities. I mean, we could speak forever about the specific differences of how intersectionality impacts, you know, a gay man differently than a transgender man, you know. But yeah, I mean, the needs are very much different. But the best way to find out what those needs are is to just ask the person. Yeah. What are your needs around how your trans male identity intersects with your evangelical Christian faith?
Yeah, and I think, you know, really what I'm gathering from this conversation is really just that. Meet the person where they're at, work to understand each individual part of their identity, and how they intersect with one another and what that experience is like for the other. Right? So which makes sense why you don't want to say, oh, okay, if you're working with a bisexual person, you would want to say this, because that's not it. No. It's 10,000 times more complicated than that.
And I think that makes working with these individuals easier, but also difficult at the same time, right? Like, we like to adhere to a treatment manual, but it's easy because you kind of just, you're a guider. You're a guider, right? You're guiding the person to, you know, reach their goals.
Right, you're understanding it alongside with them.
Facilitator of their change, basically.
Okay, great. You know, Brian, this conversation that we were able to have, super grateful for it, super thankful for it. It was very insightful and helpful, and I really appreciate it. And I hope all the viewers appreciate it as well. My name's Tim, again from the Lucan Center for Psychotherapy, here with Dr. Brian Amarello, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Hey guys, if you like what you just saw, please feel free to check out our videos in our library, and also hit the subscribe button so you can check out our future videos.